onside kick try. McAfee recovers his own kick.
That is what we call a surprise onside kick. And as of 2024, as far as we know, it is a completely dead play. Yeah, you heard me right. With the new kickoff rule change, moving forward, everyone will be far, far away from the ball, forcing teams to announce when they want to attempt an onside only in the fourth quarter. So it's safe to say that this play is completely cooked. But man, as we look through the years, when people pulled off this play and it worked, holy shit, was it awesome.
Oh, onside kick to start it. They go onside. The ball is loose and the Lions have it. An onside kick and Feely has recovered. Onside kick try and the Bills recover. Onside kick.
So to memorialize this now dead play, we're going to go back through the decades to see how this play began, how it's grown, and really just lay it to rest. Now, the earliest iteration I can find comes from a 1924 newspaper article regaling about a 1907 onside-esque kick in a collegiate match between Princeton and Yale. And by 1927, the onside kick was found in a book called Practical Football and How to Teach It, where it outlines this short 10-yard kick where you block off the guard in an attempt to recover the football, also known as the first ever drawn up onside kick. And it was even stated to be worth a trial, as it was not something done really at all at this point. But we wouldn't see too many of these onside kick attempts during the 30s through 50s, as it wasn't until the 60s and 70s that we'd start to get an uptick with this style of kick, specifically when the game was on the line, as a close range kick was just a bit too scary to attempt, even though we would slowly begin to see the rise of the weaponized onside. Now in 1979, up by 2 scores, looking to ice the game, the Seahawks pull off the most exciting form of this play, known notably as the middle dribble. This is a short kick down the middle of the field, where it's not uncommon for the kicker to be the one to recover it. We would also see something more like what was designed in the early 20s in Super Bowl 30, where the Steelers, who were in a pinch, would kick the gutsy surprise onside to get the ball back against the Cowboys. It would pick up steam again in the 80s and 90s, even though these clips are extremely hard to come by, but we do have the Bills surprise onside kick in 92, when down by 25, to help them spur this massive comeback in the playoffs. So it seemed this play was used in 2 situations due to our small data pool, either putting the nail in the coffin or trying to pry yourself out of it. This would greatly change though in the 2000s as we entered the golden era of this play. I'm talking about the year 2000 having 6 surprise onside kick attempts that were all recovered. Now, largely I think this was spurred on by the specializations of kickers increasing during the 70s as we were getting more soccer style kicks, making the onside more consistent, and just the surprising success rate it would have. The Eagles would open up the game against the Cowboys with an onside to completely dominate them. Later on, the Falcons would pull it off against the Rams in an attempt to get back into the game with no avail. The Lions, in an attempt to salvage a game against the Colts, would pull off potentially the slowest onside kick of all time as the middle dribble inched his way across the line, just for the Dolphins a week later to use it against them to bury them. The Redskins that season would see the Falcons' success against the Rams and emulate it, this time with the middle dribble attempt, and the Cowboys would not let the season pass without getting their comeuppance as they surprised the Titans with an onside of their own late in the season. Now 2001, we would see a similarly strong year for the play, with the Cowboys opening up against the Bucks in the first quarter with one of these plays. The Titans would have a similar idea against the Ravens, as we can see that the shift was going towards a high bounce onside kick to give the team time to get under it and block the only guy that had a chance to salvage this play for the return team. The Bills would continue this trend against the Jets in another beautifully pulled off attempt. The Rams would also see the Jets' weakness to this play, and just 2 weeks after the Bills game, the Rams would successfully convert the same sort of high skip method. And you won't see a more textbook method being executed when the Falcons pulled the exact same kick against the Cowboys, who just had no shot at even competing for it. And if you want to know why this method is coming about, let's take a look at the next one as we talk about it. You see, with the ball being at the 30 instead of the 35, this means that the front line for the return unit would usually be a little further back to give more cushion to fall back and make blocks. But if you notice here that the Chiefs are lined up 12 yards off the ball and cheating backwards to get to their landmarks on time, it's by no accident that this ball goes to the Chiefs' right side. As you see, the left side blocker is stuck here in place while the right side is cheating back. And of course, he's nowhere close to making a play on this one. But if an edge blocker isn't going to cheat back and a middle blocker will, then you pull out the middle dribble like we see against the Rams as the Falcons are able to convert a second quarter fake on them this year. And this isn't a surprise onside, but I couldn't not include it because it is a fake onside from the Lions who put it deep against the Packers who were expecting something closer, and it worked out beautifully in their favor. But still, another 6 surprise onsides that were successful this year, and if you think things would slow down in 2002, oh buddy, they are going to just keep chugging along. The Eagles would see the Titans lining up around 14 yards from the ball and decide they would take their chances on the middle dribble as it works to a T because not nary a soul was near the kicker when he fell on it. Now this year we're going to get a reoccurring theme throughout the video, which is going to be the Falcons and the Buccaneers running surprise onsides against each other. The Falcons start this battle by pulling it off against the Buccaneers after a field goal drive in the first quarter, and it wouldn't happen again this year, but just remember this little rivalry because the Buccaneers would want their get back. The Browns also pulled off a surprise onside during a non-surprise onside situation by lining everybody up on the right side of the field and then kicking the middle dribble, which was a brilliant move if you ask me. Another subtle theme is that if a team gets one fake pulled on them, they would be a target, which you might have already noticed in this video, but the Vikings pull this play off against the Buccaneers again to get the ball back. Now at the start of the 2003 season, the Rams would try to really make their name as prize onside getters with a great one against the 49ers to get the balls back. Then the Saints would take a look at last year's tape of the Bucs and keep the theme going by, you guess it, pulling off another middle dribble against them. And if you think, Isaac, this play looks too easy to pull off, well, let me get you an example of why it doesn't always work out so well. You see, this season, the Eagles were going to try to win their 7th straight game against the Cowboys with another opening onside kick, as it would absolutely backfire, as Dallas would take it the other direction for 6 points, ultimately running away with the game as well. Then the Bucs would need something late in the 4th quarter against the Falcons, and in one of my favorite plays, we get what we call the stinger onside, where you kick the ball as hard as you can directly into the opposing team, which works out perfectly as the Bucs get the ball back. But that's only 4 successful surprises, and 1 being returned for a touchdown, so you can imagine that things start to dry up for a little bit. The Eagles in 2004 wouldn't like how their last year's attempt went, and in order to make a point, they had to bully the special kid, the Panthers, by hitting the surprise onside against them. The Falcons, seeing how well the stinger worked against them, gave it a try against the Broncos this year to get the ball back, which is a beautifully hard play to pull off, but so fun to watch when it works. And it's honestly a much easier recovery when it works than the middle dribble. That doesn't mean the middle dribble was dead, as the Bills kicker pulled it off against the Seahawks this year. And in one of the most amazing events ever, the Titans would use the trick kick against the Colts not once, but twice in the year of 2004, getting the ball back both times to lose the game by a whopping 27 points anyway. But still, that's gotta be a record. In 2005, after signing Joe Nedney, the 49ers would put him to work with not 1, but 2 surprise onsides that worked to perfection that year. The only other team to pull off this feat this year would be the Bills, as the meta was purely the single bounce high hop onside. Now, 2005 was a light year, but in 2006 it picked back up with the Packers using the high bounce against the Jets, who pop up again, but don't worry, we're actually going to figure out who ran the onside the most and had it run on them the most at the end, so stick around for that. Next, the Niners pop back up to get a couple onsides, with one coming against the Vikings early in the season, and their second one against the Saints, who would then take their anger out on the Cowboys while up by over 2 scores by pulling off their own onside, which the Saints would come to like doing quite a bit. The Falcons would come out this year and not just pull it off against the Steelers early in the season, but would come out and pull it off again against the Eagles, who got caught lacking for the 2nd time this season, with the inclusion of a Viking and a Jets onside later that season. That is a total of 8 surprise onsides, which is just gorgeous. But if you like 2006, oh man, just stay in your seat for 2007, because the Raiders learned that their top of the league special teams could be used to greater effect with this new tool in the bag against the Broncos. Then the Cardinals would commit bird treason with a surprise onside against the Ravens, with the 49ers coming again twice this year with a second half surprise against the Seahawks and a high hop against the Buccaneers later that season. And why did they know that the one against the Buccaneers would work? Because earlier that year, the Falcons would run it against them while getting absolutely blown out. That was the Falcons' 2nd time this year, as even before that, they would steal another drive against the Saints. And the Saints would also find their way into the season when they would run it against the Jaguars successfully, who just 2 weeks after the Jaguars would use this play against the Texans. Holy crap. crap, what a year, and we're not even done yet. The Redskins would also victimize the Jets again. The Eagles would pull off one against the Patriots, and we would get 2 more, with the Vikings getting one off of the Skins and the Steelers, making the Ravens look goofy again this season for a whopping 12 surprise onsides in a single year, the year it truly peaked. 2008 would continue to be a strong year, with the Colts realizing that they too could run this play, which I know you guys are waiting for some other Colts ones. The Bills would also get the trick on the board for the first time in a couple of years, and the Cardinals would catch, guess who, the Jets slipping with a beautiful surprise onside. The first real innovation on this play in a while. And a friend of my own and friend of the channel, Shane Graham, would make his way onto the list with a gorgeous middle dribble where he got lit up like a Christmas tree. The Rams would get another one on the Patriots, who have yet to pull one off successfully, and the Titans would have maybe the weirdest one so far, as they kicked it with only 2 seconds left on the clock, so you can't really do much when you get the ball back. But the Raiders saw that work against the Texans, so they decided to give it a try, which also worked for another 8-attempt year. 2009 would be filled with plays like this and might honestly have the most famous one. It started off though with the Chargers giving us a different variation of this kick, which is more like a slider, and it's a deeper onside meant to sneak past the front line, which it didn't, but still it's just a hard to handle kick, which it was, and it got them the ball back. Then Tampa would get filled with the sense of rage against the team wearing green, so they pulled off the onside against the Eagles and the Jets in the same season. The Dolphins would also pull it off against the Pats, and then the Packers would do the same thing to the Cardinals, with the season ending in a Super Bowl between the Colts and the Saints where nothing of importance happened. Just kidding, down by 4 points at the start of the second half, the Saints pull out the surprise onside, shocking everybody, stealing a possession where they would eventually use that momentum to run over the Colts, with that onside being a low slider type, which had just become more popular at the beginning of this year. Now, it happening on the biggest stage seemed to qualm coaches' desires to run this play, because 2010 had significantly less than the prior 5 years, with the Broncos victimizing the Jets, the Chargers pulling out a fast one on the Patriots, and then the Packers being inspired by the Chargers and also pulling it out against the Patriots. And in one of the most memorable games of the 2010 season, the Eagles would use this play against the Giants to spur a large comeback. And while this was amazing, it was actually only the second most notable special teams play of that game, known as the Miracle in the New Meadowlands 2. 2011 would give us a slight uptick as the Bucs nab a possession against the Vikings, the Packers pull one off against the Broncos, and the Titans steal the ball away from the Steelers. The 49ers also get back on the board against the Giants, and the Texans take one away from Jacksonville and the Chargers to pull it off against the Bills, with both the high hop and the slider being the onside of choice this year. Now, you may notice that the teams were kicking off from the 35. That was a change put in place this year that would begin to deter onside kicks, as people would tend to be much closer to the 10-yard marker than years prior. And we felt this in the playoffs when the Packers would try to get a one-over on the Giants in the second quarter to no avail. That wouldn't slow down the Packers, however, as in 2012 they pulled it off perfectly against the Rams, as well as the Jaguars pulling off the first middle dribble in the minute against the Raiders. The Dolphins would add another tally to the Jets' losing streak, as well as the Broncos adding one to their own losing streaks when the Chargers did it to them. The Eagles would also relive their 2010 antics against the Giants this year, this time on the opening kickoff to start both halves with the ball. 2013 would be the same energy as its end-of-the-world counterpart, with the Packers getting a high bounce against the Bears. The Cowboys would come out and shock the Saints in the third quarter. Tampa Bay would continue their rivalry against the Falcons in recovering surprise onsides. The Rams would also steal a possession from the Saints, who got so fed up with it they had to go bully the special kid in the Panthers to steal one back. 2014 was special, as in 6 games the Colts pulled off 2 surprise onside kicks, with McAfee getting the self-recovery on the second one for the probably second most famous onside of all time. The Giants pulled it off twice, with one against the 49ers, but would also get one of the weirdest onsides where after a couple end-of-half penalties by the Redskins, they would hit an onside kick from the opposing 35-yard line and get it back, which would give the idea to the Cowboys to do the same thing, with the only other one this year happening as the Jaguars steal a possession against the Ravens. 2015, we would get the Patriots' revenge year, as after a long hiatus would run not one but 2 surprise onsides, with one against the Redskins and the other with this weird little pitch to drop kick surprise onside, and it didn't work out, but it was cool to see. The Redskins would also pull off one against the Buccaneers this season, as well as the Bears getting a fast one on the Vikings. We would also get this very daring overtime attempt by the Seattle Seahawks, which did not work out well for them whatsoever, as they would lose that game. 2016, we would see why this play would start to decline, as the Packers and Titans would both try to pull off a surprise onside against each other, with it working neither of the time, despite the fact that just a couple weeks later, the Bears would try it against the Titans and it would work, which was the only time it succeeded this year. 2017, we would see the last breaths of a dying play. The Dolphins would pull it off twice against the Raiders and the Broncos, doing it with a lead already both times, and the Jets would finally start to get their comeuppance against the Chargers, while the Packers would execute another brilliant one against the Lions. That offseason though, the NFL and their attempt to make the kickoff safer would greatly damage this play, as they allowed no more run-ups on the kickoff, meaning it was much harder to recover plays like these. And likewise, we would see no attempts in 2018. We would see two the following year, with the Lions getting a stinger against the Bears and the Dolphins going with a middle dribble that year as well. 2020 would be another dead year. 21, a desperate Lions team would get the ball back against the Rams, but lose that game anyway, followed by 2022, where we would see the Jaguars pull it off against the Chiefs one last time, and we didn't know at the time that it would be the last time ever. And since you've made it this far, we have to give out 3 awards. First, we've got the Ball of Steel Award going to the Falcons, who are able to successfully pull off this play a whopping 9 times, making victims of the Rams twice, the Cowboys, Buccaneers, Broncos, Eagles, Steelers, and Saints. Give them a round of applause. With the 49ers and Packers both trailing with 7 conversions. And the team who had it converted on them with the Surprise Victim Award is going to be a tie between the Rams and the Jets, who both had it successfully run on them 8 whopping times. And finally, the Community Award, given to a random community member via Twitter, where I'm gonna tweet out the type of video I'm making, you post if you ever had a play like it before, and then I will choose randomly who gets it. This one goes to Rob Meyer. Beautiful pop-over kick. So, if you like this history lesson, consider subscribing, and peace.
A kick to start it! And the Jags have recovered, I believe.